antidote is some event or substance that reverses the action of the remedy, stops the action of the remedy. Now, if you remember in my lecture, the lecture on the law of similars, you remember that I gave Hahnemann's explanation for how cure takes place. It says, the vital force is always affected by a stronger disease and more than a weaker disease. So if a stronger, similar disease, that is a remedy which is stronger than your natural disease, comes into your body, and the vital force completely forgets about the natural disease and is focused only on the stronger artificial disease of the remedy. Then when the remedy wears off in a short period of time, then the body is left completely cured. So if that's the case, how could we get an antidote? It's either happened or it hasn't happened. That's the sort of the quantum change that's supposed to occur. And then we talked about the concept of resonance, that the remedy is actually like a resonating factor, the way that an opera singer can break a crystal glass by singing the exact pitch that the glass is tuned to. So the same way that the remedy, as it vibrates in our system somehow, whatever that means, as it vibrates in our system, it creates a resonance which causes an aggravation and then an amelioration, raising the energy level in the system. And thus, if the remedy, if that vibration is somehow dampened, then that extra energy that's being brought into the system is no longer available, and we have an antidote. Now, theory is all well and fine, but what is the reality of the situation? The reality is that for years, for 200 years, homeopaths have noticed that certain influences will stop the action of the remedy. It's just empiric. Hahnemann discusses this in aphorisms number 259 and 260. Now, you remember that he alludes to this in the third aphorism when he talks about that the physician must also learn how to remove obstacles to cure. So generally, antidotes fall under the category of an obstacle to cure. Due to the necessary as well as expedient minuteness of the dose used in the homeopathic procedure, it is easy to grasp why during treatment, everything else that could in any way act medicinally must be removed from the diet and regimen, so that the subtle dose will not be overtuned and extinguished or even disturbed by any foreign medicinal irritant. Then in 260 he says, for the chronically ill, it is all the more necessary to carefully seek out obstacles to cure, since the disease has usually been aggravated by such malignities and other morbific actions. Often, these are errors in the patient's regimen that have not been discerned.
I want to talk about history, and I want to, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little while, and then we're going to watch a video put together by Julian Winston. There's really two purposes in my mind for talking about the history of homeopathy, and this is focusing on the history of homeopathy in the United States. The first reason is really just to gain a greater appreciation of our roots, of where we've come from, of some of the inspirational people and what they've done that may inspire us to work harder and be better homeopaths. And the second part of it is, you've heard the saying, those who don't understand history are condemned to repeat it. And homeopathy's had a very interesting course in the United States, which we'll talk about as we go through today. And I certainly don't have the ultimate answer on what happened and why to homeopathy. And I have some ideas about it, and I'll bet you do too. So our purpose in talking about history is really twofold. I want to start by setting the stage for the appearance of homeopathy, to talk first philosophically and then medically. What was the world like when Samuel Hahnemann brought us homeopathy. One of the important roots of homeopathy to understand, and this will be talked about in the video, a thread that comes from the first of medical philosophers is the thread of empiricism, which is not just in medical thinking, but in any kind of thinking, the notion of empiricism. It comes from the Greek word which means experience, and it's a way of approaching the world such that how you think about it and how you act upon it are based on what you can directly observe in your experience in the world. Experience is the only source of knowledge. Now that's to be distinguished, and very importantly distinguished in American history, from the trend of rationalism. Not necessarily rational, but more like theoretical. And in this way of approaching the world, you settle on a few basic fundamental principles, and from those principles interpret the world as you experience it. And that was the basis for medicine, the predominant form of MD practiced medicine at the time of Hahnemann. We've heard stories of medical practice from the 1700s, and it seems ludicrous when we think about what people did now, but it was indeed the standard of care, and it was considered rational medicine, and we in retrospect think of it as heroic medicine. And that was what prevailed in the world from about in the medical scientific world from about the mid-1700s to the mid-1800s. You don't have to look very far at it through our retrospectoscope to see everything that was wrong with it. A prime example of how things were practiced at that time can come from if we look at William Cullen, and we have good reason on our behalf to be grateful to William Cullen. Now, William Cullen is who Hahnemann was reading when he translated Cullen's work on the nature, the role of, Cullen had a theory about why quinine worked for malaria, right? Bitter taste. And that's the kind of thing that an empiricist would drive him crazy. Yes, quinine works to cure malaria, we can see that, but we have no business, do we, deciding what it is about malaria just based on that observation that is the basis of the cause. Cullen did other things as well. He was a great analyst of malaria and fevers in general.